I paid for my sister's wedding. But she refused to watch my son. Pouting face. Watch till the end, like, share and subscribe for daily drama stories. I paid for my sister's wedding, but when I asked her to watch my son for a day, she told me, "I'm not your servant. Who do you think you are?" So, I cancelled everything and told her, "Well, then I'm not your bank." My name is Ethan, and it all started with my family, my parents, David and Susan, and my younger sister, Chloe. As far back as I can remember, my life has revolved around them, especially around Chloe, the queen of the house, the favorite daughter. But let's get one thing straight from the start, I don't hold a grudge, or at least I didn't until everything blew up. I grew up in a humble home in a medium-sized city where everyone knows each other. My parents were hardworking people, but we never had much money. David worked in a supermarket, and Susan worked part-time at a clothing store while taking care of us. They always gave us what they could, and although it wasn't much, I appreciated it. I didn't need luxuries, the love with which they gave me things was enough. A pair of used shoes, an old t-shirt from my dad, a plate of food, even if it was small, all of that made me happy because it came from them. But with Chloe, it was different. She always got the best. If there was a bigger piece of meat on the table, it was for her. If there was money for new shoes, they were for her. If they had to choose between buying me a notebook for school or a dress for Chloe, did you guess? She always won. My parents treated her like she was a princess, as if the world revolved around her. They always said she was special, that she had a unique sparkle. I, on the other hand, was the practical son, the one who didn't ask for much, the one who made do. Don't get me wrong, I loved my parents with all my heart, and they treated me well. I never held anything against them. I thought that if giving Chloe everything made them happy, it was okay. I didn't need to be the favorite. I told myself it was just a way to make her feel good, to fill some void that maybe she had. Besides, Chloe and I were never close. She looked at me with disdain, as if I were a nuisance. If we played together, she always wanted to be the leader, the one in charge. If I achieved something, like getting good grades, she would find a way to overshadow it with one of her stories. And my parents, well, they applauded everything she did while my achievements went unnoticed. Despite everything, I didn't mind too much. I focused on my studies, on my dreams. I always wanted to be a doctor, not just to help others, but because I knew it was a way to get ahead, to build something for myself. I worked hard, studied through the night, got a scholarship, and became a surgeon. Not just any surgeon, but one of the best in the city. My patients respected me, my colleagues admired me, and little by little, my practice filled with people who trusted me. Over time, I started earning good money. I didn't become a millionaire, but I had more than enough to live well, to save, to indulge in a few things, and above all, to help my parents. When I started earning well, the first thing I did was support mom and dad. I sent them money every month so they could live more comfortably, pay their debts, and not have to work so hard. They were grateful, or at least that's what they said. But soon, I noticed something that made me uncomfortable. Part of the money I sent them ended up in Chloe's hands. My sister, who had never worked a day in her life, suddenly started appearing in designer clothes, expensive handbags, and luxury makeup. I wasn't stupid, I knew that money came from what I gave my parents. They, in their eagerness to please their favorite daughter, passed on everything they could to her. Chloe, for her part, never thanked me. On the contrary, she continued to treat me as if I were a loser. When we saw each other, she would look me up and down and make sarcastic comments. "Is that the car you bought with your doctor's salary? How basic," she would say while strutting around with a handbag that probably cost what I earned in a week. Once at a family gathering, she had the audacity to tell me, "Ethan, you should try harder. Look how well I'm doing." Try harder, me, who had broken my back to get where I was while she lived off my scraps. Things changed one day a few months ago when Chloe arrived at my parents' house with news that made them jump for joy. "I'm getting married," she announced in that sing-song voice she uses when she wants to be the center of attention. My parents showered her with praise. Mom hugged her. Dad said it was the best news of his life. I, sitting on the couch, just smiled and said, "Congratulations." I didn't say it with ill intent, but I wasn't excited either. I knew Chloe, I knew everything she did had an ulterior motive, and I wasn't wrong. Chloe's fiancé, according to her, was a successful businessman. No one knew exactly what he did, but she talked about him as if he were a tycoon. She said they traveled together, that he took her to expensive restaurants, that he promised her a life of luxury. I had my doubts, but I said nothing. What Chloe did say, with a victim face that no one would believe, was that they didn't have money for the wedding, not just any wedding, of course, but a luxurious one, the kind you see in magazines, with a ballroom in a five-star hotel, gourmet catering, imported flowers, everything a queen like her deserved. Something smelled fishy to me right there, because if the fiancé was a successful businessman but didn't have money or didn't want to spend on the wedding, then he wasn't a millionaire. But my parents, infatuated with the idea of seeing their favorite daughter at the altar, turned to look at me. Their eyes had that mix of pleading and hope that I knew so well. "Ethan," Susan said in that sweet voice she used when she wanted to convince me of something, "you know, we've always dreamed of seeing one of our children get married. It would be so lovely to see Chloe at the altar, wouldn't it?" David nodded, adding, "It's an opportunity for the family to shine. Ethan, you're the man of the house now, the one with the means." I wanted to say no. I wanted to remind them of all the times Chloe had treated me poorly, all the times she had called me useless, a loser, or simply ignored me. I wanted to tell them it wasn't fair, that I always had to be the one to solve everything while she got all the applause. But I couldn't. Seeing my parents so excited, so happy, softened my heart. I loved them too much. So, against my better judgment, I said, "All right, I'll pay for the wedding." Chloe didn't thank me, not even pretending to be grateful. The only thing she said was, "I hope you don't embarrass me, Ethan. This wedding has to be perfect." And so my ordeal began. From that moment on, Chloe and Susan became the official wedding planners, and I became the ATM. Every few days, I'd get a new message from Chloe with another invoice: the ballroom at the Grand Star Hotel, a fortune; the catering from a famous chef, essential; the flowers flown in from some country, necessary. Every time I saw the numbers, my stomach knotted. It wasn't just the money, it was Chloe's attitude. She never asked how I was, never consulted if I agreed. She just demanded. And for my parents' sake, I kept paying. Sometimes, alone in my office, I wondered why I was doing it, why I sacrificed so much for someone who didn't respect me. But then I'd think of Susan and David, their smiles, how much it meant to see Chloe married. And I'd continue. I thought maybe after the wedding, Chloe would change, thank me, and we'd be a real family. How naive I was. Everything seemed fine until 5 days before the wedding. That day, I got a call that changed everything. It was an important client, a businessman from another city who needed urgent surgery. He offered a considerable sum, but I had to travel that day. I didn't think twice, it was a great opportunity, not just for the money, but for my reputation. The only problem was my son, Paul. Paul is 5 years old, and he's my world. I've been a single father since his mother left us when he was just a year old. It wasn't easy, but Paul and I have gotten through it together. He's a sweet, curious boy and is always by my side, even on the toughest days. That day, Paul was on school vacation, and my usual babysitter was unavailable. I had no one else, so I called my parents. "We're in a nearby city, Ethan," Susan said. "But Chloe's home. Ask her." My heart sank. Asking Chloe for a favor was like playing Russian roulette, but I had no choice. It was just one day. I thought after everything I'd paid for, after what I'd done for her wedding, she could at least help with this. So, I put Paul in the car, drove to my parents' house, and knocked on the door. Chloe opened it, her face saying it all. She looked at me like I was an annoyance, like my presence offended her. "What do you want, Ethan?" she said, crossing her arms. I swallowed, staying calm. "Chloe, I have to travel for work. It's urgent. Could you watch Paul for one day? Just today, I promise." Her response froze me. She laughed, sarcastic, and said, "Who do you think I am? Your servant, your slave? I'm not here to watch kids, Ethan. Pay a babysitter or something. Don't you see? I'm about to marry a businessman. I don't have time for this." I was speechless. The world stopped. After everything I'd paid for, after every cent on her wedding, this was what I got. I tried reasoning, "Chloe, please. It's just one day. It's important to me." But she wouldn't budge. "If you think because you paid for my wedding, you can humiliate me, you're mistaken," she said with arrogance that boiled my blood. "Don't bother me anymore." In that moment, something inside me broke. I looked at Paul, confused beside me, then at Chloe. "Perfect," I said coldly. "If you're not my servant, then I'm not your bank." I turned, took Paul's hand, and got in the car. As I drove, my head was a whirlwind. I was furious, but determined. I called the event hall, the caterer, the organizers. I canceled everything. There would be no wedding. Not after how she treated me. Chloe could think she was the queen, but I wasn't her subject anymore. When I finished, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear the fallout yet. I looked at Paul in the rearview mirror. "Are you okay, buddy?" I asked. He looked up and nodded with a smile. "Yes, Daddy." I had no idea how to manage taking him to work, but in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time in a long time, I'd set a boundary. I wasn't going back. The trip to the other city was intense, but fortunately, everything went well. The surgery was a success. The client was grateful. And the check he gave me made the effort worthwhile. But as I drove back home with Paul asleep in the back seat, my mind wasn't on the money or success. It was on what awaited when I turned my phone back on. When I got home, the first thing I did was check my cell. 53 missed calls, 30 from Chloe, 15 from Susan, 5 from David, and 3 from unknowns. A mountain of texts, mostly from Chloe. I didn't read them all, but the first few set the tone. You're despicable. How dare you ruin my life? Susan had written too, her tone softer but painful. Ethan, why did you do this? Your sister is devastated. David was direct. You're selfish, Ethan. I thought you were better than this. The next day, as I had breakfast with Paul, the phone rang again. It was Susan. I took a deep breath before answering. Ethan, she began, voice breaking. How could you do this to your sister? She was so excited about her wedding. It was her dream. I stayed calm. Mom, it wasn't my intention to ruin anything. But do you know what happened? I asked her for a favor, a simple favor, to watch Paul for one day. One day. After everything I've paid for, after everything I've done for her, she told me she wasn't my slave. Does that seem fair to you? Susan sighed. Oh, Ethan, don't exaggerate. Chloe is stressed about the wedding. It's normal for her to be a little sensitive. That's no reason to make such a drastic decision. I felt my blood boil. Sensitive? Stressed? Did that justify treating me like trash? Mom, it's not just this, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Chloe has always treated me like I'm worthless. And you too, forgive me for saying so, have always put her above me. Always. I paid for that wedding for you, not for her. But not anymore. There was silence on the other end. Then Susan said something that hurt more than expected. You're ungrateful, Ethan. After everything we've done for you. I didn't know what to say. Ungrateful? Me, who had worked to exhaustion to give them a better life. Me, who never asked for anything but a little affection. I hung up without another word. I didn't want to argue anymore. I didn't want to say something I'd regret. The following days were a whirlwind. Chloe didn't stop sending messages, each more venomous than the last. You're just jealous. You've always wanted to ruin my happiness. In another, she tried manipulation. If you really love Mom and Dad, you'll reconsider. But I didn't budge. I'd made a decision, and I wasn't going back. Little by little, more details about the cancelled wedding came to light. I found out Chloe had bragged all over town that her fiancé, the supposed businessman, was paying for everything. But when it fell apart, he didn't contribute a single cent. In fact, rumors said he broke up with her shortly after the wedding was cancelled. Apparently, Chloe had led him to believe she came from a millionaire family, that she was some kind of heiress. When he realized it was a lie, that the money came from me, a simple surgeon who worked hard, the guy wanted nothing to do with her. I couldn't help feeling a pang of satisfaction hearing that, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because her lies had finally caught up with her. My parents didn't see it that way. Every time I spoke with them, they tried to make me feel guilty. Chloe is devastated, Susan would say. She won't leave her room. She cries all day. David was harsher. Fix this, Ethan. You're the man of the family. It's your responsibility. But I wasn't willing to give in anymore. No, Dad, I told him during one call. My responsibility is Paul. My responsibility is myself. Chloe had her chance, and she blew it. I'm not going to keep sacrificing for someone who doesn't respect me. That conversation marked a point of no return. For the first time, I told my parents that if they kept putting her above me, I'd have no choice but to distance myself. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I loved my parents, but I also knew I couldn't keep living in Chloe's shadow. It wasn't fair to me, and it certainly wasn't fair to Paul. Over time, I began to rebuild my life. I focused on my work, on my son, on what really mattered. I cut off all contact with Chloe. I blocked her number, stopped reading her messages. I didn't want her poison anymore. With my parents, things were more complicated. I still spoke with them, but conversations were tense, full of uncomfortable silences. I tried to explain my point of view, but they always ended up defending Chloe. She's your sister, Ethan, they'd say. The family should be united. But what kind of family was it where one person always gives and the other only takes? In the following days, I thought about everything that had happened. I had lost my sister, maybe forever. My relationship with my parents was hanging by a thread. But for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free from the expectations. Free from the burden of always being the one who gives. Free from Chloe's shadow. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew one thing: I was never going to be anyone's bank again. Subscribe for more daily stories.